Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology, giving you a few tips on how we look at charts and what's coming up in the weeks ahead. Right now we're coming up on a full moon eclipse, which is the echo of the eclipse that took place on the 12th recently and was so powerful. A lot of intensity in that eclipse, and now we're coming to a balance point where the natural inclination of this phase, the full moon phase, is to represent a fulfillment of what has come before it in the 2 weeks leading up to it of the lunation cycle. That means we're coming to a place where we get to see another point of view on what we've been up to, what we've been trying to accomplish, how we can look at that progress or the difficulties of the progress and see it from a different perspective. So it's very important. And interestingly, we're also coming now in this equinox time of the year. We've already had the fall equinox by the time that the full moon eclipse takes place. That's also a balance point, is it not? That's the energy of the sun coming to its greatest fulfillment at the time of the summer solstice back in July, and then retreating a bit on the horizon to where we can now see equal day, equal night, the equinox. And that means that the solar energy is fading back towards darkness, greater darkness, until December 21st, when we have the moment of the shortest day. And that's, at least in the northern hemisphere, that is. This refers to the northern hemisphere. So this is a very interesting time of year. It's a very interesting time between these two eclipses as well, when we are really in a deep process of trying to understand ourselves better. Mercury is now retrograde. So let's take a look at the specifics of this eclipse configuration. Well, let's take a look at this configuration of this eclipse. So the full moon eclipse with the sun opposite the moon at 4 degrees and 40 minutes of Libra. And again, Libra represents balance, just as the equinoctial time represents balance when the sun enters Libra. And we have a balance that's indicated in this symbol, do we not? Because this shows the sun setting. That's what this symbol really represents, which means the balance point between the dawn and the darkness, between when we go from day to night, which is what's happening with this equinoctial period. Mercury is now retrograde, you can tell by the little r, and it actually started at about 15, almost 16 degrees of Libra, and then moved backwards since that time, the 17th of September, till now, which is now being coming up, well, from my standpoint, coming up on Sunday. When we have this eclipse, it'll be all the way back at 9 degrees, getting a little bit closer to the sun, so we have an emphasis on the retrograde of Mercury, which will actually, a few days later than this, on the 30th, we're going to have the point where Mercury and the sun are exactly together in the sky, and that's one peak of the retrograde period. We might expect to see more of the manifestations of Mercury retrograde at that time. So when we think about this configuration, we really want to think about also what's going on in our lives as we reflect. Mercury means to look inward, as we think about what's happening for ourselves. And remember that the eclipse, the solar eclipse from the 12th of September, was actually a very powerful one. And it featured all of the outer planets and Chiron. So we might want to look at that as well. And also Saturn was emphasized at that time. How are those reflected in this configuration, so we can get some idea of how that's doing and how those factors are filtering into our consciousness as we go through this period, this intense period? Well, we can see that Uranus is actually still at 19 degrees where it was. The solar eclipse is at 20, which triggered that, so we know that there's a strong presence of Uranus, which is epiphany, which is surprises, which is sudden events taking place that we didn't expect, and we can get some unexpected enlightenment out of that. And whereas we don't see a whole lot of emphasis on Uranus in this configuration, we could actually get a little bit more information by right-clicking in the Time Passages software on the Mercury presence, because we can see from that their declinations are quite similar. Mercury is contraparallel to Uranus by the fact that it has a negative declaration of 6 degrees and 45 minutes, whereas Uranus, the declination is 6 degrees and 50 minutes in the opposite way, plus, but they're still connected. So we don't consider this an opposition, but rather more of a type of conjunction. But that means that there is, because Mercury is powerful, it's retrograding and it's close to the Sun, and it's making this contraparallel with Uranus, we do expect Uranus to be a big factor in this coming weekend, just as it was a while back on the 12th, and all this time since then. So there's a lot of realizations that are happening, a lot of shifts in what we might expect, unexpected events, timing of accidents too, for that matter. And so we really do want to reflect on how things are opening up for us in new ways. And in fact, this lunar phase refers to, now we have the Sun opposite the Moon. We have the concept of relationship, of the male and female principles brought together. So we have new perspectives on what's been going on for us. And this is very important to reflect on as we think about what's happening for us now and through this weekend when we're having this intense energy coming in again. Saturn is also emphasized, by the way, in this eclipse, because we have Mars just entered into Virgo, so that makes a square, does it not? A strong connection between Mars and Saturn. Frustrating time when things go slowly, it's hard to get things done. We might want to remember that this is all for the best in a certain way, because we get focused about what we're up to, and we can see more clearly the lessons, and the frustrations can also lead us to see the lessons in what's going on. Well, another big factor at the timing of the original solar eclipse that started this cycle was, of course, Chiron, which was exactly opposite the eclipse degree at that time. It's moved a little since then. Well, we do have an aspect with Venus being in conjunct, or quincunx, to this point, 150 degrees, although it's past the point of its exact. So I believe that the Chiron impulse is somewhat fading in this timing. We've been through some deep sensations of that, getting in touch with our inner wounding. Where are we feeling insufficient? Where are we feeling not good enough? And how can we accept that part of ourselves and go beyond it? That's really important right now, to really focus on everything that happens, pay the closest possible attention to everything that's going on, and that's really completely in keeping with the Mercury retrograde period when we're doing a lot of inward searching. And as we do, remember that Neptune is still prominent. It's prominent in this eclipse configuration as well as it was in the solar eclipse that just happened. And so Neptune brings us into a kind of a strange space between worlds. We're partaking of the beyond as we go through our normal everyday lives. And this is actually an important factor when we take that into account. It's a spiritual dimension of our lives that's very important for us to be able to recognize and to focus upon as we go through these challenging times. As far as resources go, I'd like to show you guys a book. This book is by Dane Rudhyar. It's called The Lunation Cycle. And Dane Rudhyar is somebody that we really all should know a little bit about. He's the dean of modern humanistic astrology. He wrote back in the 30s and 40s and really started the whole movement which recaptured the notion of astrology and reformulated the notion of astrology for modern times. And he wrote this terrific book about all the phases and how important they are to reflect on as we go through them. The new moon phase is building energy. The full moon phase is a time when we have a fulfillment and a flowering of what we started with, the impulse that began. And it's a beginning point of the second half of the lunar phase where the energy fades somewhat, leading up to the next cycle. So this is the cycle of our lives, month by month. And we call it a month because it relates to the moon. The other factors that I'd like to bring to your attention, of course, is the Time Passages software, which I created in 1995, and which gives you terrific interpretations of both natal and transiting factors and progressions and comparisons and other techniques. And also the book I wrote, which is Eris, the 10th planet, Revelations from the Astrological Eris, which I think is a terrific book about this new archetype that's emerging into Western astrology these days. All right, have a great couple of weeks. See you soon.